Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Austin Perry Show. I'm your host, Austin Perry, and today is Thursday, June 17th, 2021. And this is episode 44 of the Austin Perry Show. And ladies and gentlemen, I have a very special episode for you tonight. This is going to be a deep dive on the topic of anti-gravity flying machines, aka UFOs. Here on the Austin Perry Show, we like to discuss advanced technology and aliens. And we also like to discuss current events, culture, politics, and news. And here on the Austin Perry Show, we strive for expanded consciousness and enlightenment, ladies and gentlemen. And I would like to encourage all of you, please visit my website, which is AustinParry.org, and that's spelled P-A-R-R-Y, AustinParry.org. That's where you can find all of my video content and where you can find merchandise and artwork for sale. And if you would like to support me, and ladies and gentlemen, I'm a grassroots patriot journalist. If you would like to support me, please leave me a donation. You can find the donation link on austinparry.org. And if you would leave me a donation, that will help to support my video content into the future, and I will be very grateful, ladies and gentlemen. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the information tonight here on the Austin Perry Show. Episode 44 here on this June 17th, 2021 edition, which is a deep dive on the topic of anti-gravity flying machines and UFOs. And the first slide here that we have tonight to talk about and to analyze and to discuss is here behind me on the video monitor. We have this image of a Nazi flying saucer here, ladies and gentlemen. And this is allegedly a real photograph which was actually taken back during World War II. And you can see here the creases in this photograph because this is allegedly a digital image taken of a paper Polaroid photo. And this was allegedly a real photograph taken of a Nazi flying saucer, which is an ARV, an alien replication vehicle. And what that is a human-made spacecraft based off of the designs of an alien craft. And humans could have obtained these designs by either finding a wrecked alien spacecraft that wrecked onto the surface of the Earth, or potentially the leadership of governments and military are already in communication with alien races, and the aliens have passed on to us different types of spacecraft designs which we have utilized to make our own creations. And so this is a Nazi ARV, anti-gravity flying machine, and this is an alien replication vehicle. And as you can see in this photograph, which is allegedly a real photograph, according to various sources, this was a massive UFO design. And this flying saucer looks to be about 70 feet in diameter. You can see here, there's a truck here. There is a man right there. There is another man right here who looks to be maybe working on the electronics or maybe fueling the craft or tinkering on it, who knows. And then there's another truck over there. And so based on that, this looks to be about 70 feet in diameter. Massive. And this particular flying saucer design actually has landing gear and wheels, as you can see right here, and right over here. And so this could actually taxi around on a rampway or a runway or a landing strip. And so this was extremely advanced, beyond classified, and it's still classified, but it's now starting to leak out. It's starting to gain more traction within the mainstream. More people are starting to talk about it now. And this would have been a devastating weapon back during World War II, considering that the best fighter plane that we had back then was like a P-51 Mustang, which was basically just like a single piston aircraft, which had, a single propeller aircraft, I should say, which could go about 400 knots, couldn't go that high, maybe 15,000 feet. Don't quote me on that, I'm probably wrong, but it couldn't go that high. It couldn't go that fast, about 400 knots, and its weaponry that it had was basically just like machine guns in the wings. And so imagine that going up against this. This could potentially have had force fields, it could have had tractor beams, it could go potentially into space, so there was no altitude limit. And this could have had very advanced weaponry on board. As you can see here, it has two massive cannons. Based on the size of this man right here, these cannons look to be about 10 to 14 feet long. And who knows, it could have had just regular bullet projectiles, or they could have been plasma cannons, or they could have been energy weapons. Hard to say, but this would have been a massive advantage over any kind of conventional aircraft of that time, back during World War II, which was in the 1940s. And so, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. This is an alleged, real, actual photograph, a paper Polaroid photograph, which was transferred into a digital format and is now circulating online and is being shared widely. And this is just fascinating and mind-blowing, honestly. Imagine if this was actually a real photograph. I think it's a very strong likelihood that it is actually a real photograph. And so what would that mean? What would the implications be for how history has been told throughout the years and how the history books have been written? And so, ladies and gentlemen, there you go. This is an actual flying saucer developed by the Nazis. This is an alleged real photograph. And don't take my word for it, ladies and gentlemen. I encourage everyone, do your own research, look into this for yourself. Just search the term Nazi flying saucer, put it into the search bar. This image will come up. This is very easy to find. Anyone can find this image. All I did was a simple search engine, just put it into the search bar. This came up. And then I did a little bit more research and digging on this, and this seems to be a real photograph. Mind-blowing. Very intriguing, very fascinating, very thought-provoking. So there you go. That is a Nazi flying saucer, anti-gravity flying machine, UFO, unidentified aerial phenomenon. And so let's go ahead and move on to the next slide here on the Austin Perry Show on this June 17th, 2021, episode 44 edition, which is a deep dive on the topic of anti-gravity flying machines. So the next slide that we have here, ladies and gentlemen, this is an article actually from popularmechanics.com. You can see up here in the top left, Popular Mechanics. And the title of this is, "This Conspiracy Says Hitler Had a Secret Anti-Gravity UFO and the US Stole It." Well, that is very interesting indeed. Here you can see another rendering, another artist interpretation of what the Nazi UFO could have looked like. This is actually talking about the Die Glocke program, which was a Nazi program that they were developing a flying saucer, similar to the Manhattan Project, how they were developing a nuclear bomb. The Die Glocke program, which Die Glocke translates to the bell. It's German, Die Glocke, English, the bell. And this was a program where it was a classified, top secret German Nazi scientific program, which they were trying to develop advanced weaponry and anti-gravity flying machines in an attempt to turn the tide of the war which they were losing against America. And so let's go ahead and read here. A new video takes a look at the conspiracy of Die Glocke, a purported Nazi German UFO time machine hybrid. Wow, not only was it a anti-gravity flying machine, but it was also a time machine. According to legend, Die Glocke was one of the wonder weapons that German dictator Adolf Hitler developed in hopes of reversing the tide of World War II. So, ladies and gentlemen, after the tide was turned and Nazi forces were being pushed back towards Berlin, it seemed like Germany was losing the war. They were behind on manufacturing. They could not produce enough tanks. They could not produce enough ammo. They could not produce enough explosives and grenades and things like that. Their supply chains were breaking down. The U.S. and Allied forces were having much more successful bombing campaigns, taking out their manufacturing plants and warehouses and things like that. And so they were desperate to find any way to reverse the tide of the war. And so they were conducting all of these secret projects, trying to find a way to defeat the U.S. And this was allegedly one of their top secret programs, Die Glocke, which was the bell, where they were producing flying saucers, and allegedly they were also doubling as time machines. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen, popularmechanics.com, discussing Die Glocke, the bell, which was a secret Nazi program developing flying saucers. Everyone just go ahead and look this up for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Do some digging, do some research. There's information out there, and there's a lot of evidence to suggest that this is actually real and this actually happened. So there you go, popularmechanics.com. Let's go ahead and move on to the next slide here on the Austin Perry Show, episode 44. And this is a slide here from wikipedia.org. This is a real Wikipedia page, ladies and gentlemen, and the title of this Wikipedia page is Electrogravitics. And so there you go, electrogravitics. Let's go ahead and read what is electrogravitics. Electrogravitics is claimed to be an unconventional type of effect or anti-gravity force created by an electric field's effect on mass. There you go, and this is mentioning Thomas Townsend Brown, who coined the term. And Thomas Townsend Brown was one of the leading minds and innovators on the topic of anti-gravity, along with Nikola Tesla. Everyone, I encourage you strongly to research the man Thomas Townsend Brown. And there you go, electrogravitics. This is a real field of science. This is a real Wikipedia page. I'm giving you actual real information here, folks. This is wikipedia.org, very trusted, very reliable source. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide here on the Austin Perry Show, and we have another Wikipedia page, and this one is 0 point energy, ladies and gentlemen. And you might ask, what is 0 point energy? Well, let's go ahead and read. 0 point energy, ZPE, is the lowest possible energy that a quantum mechanical system may have. Unlike in classical mechanics, quantum systems constantly fluctuate in their lowest energy state as described by the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. So, 0 point energy is a form of energy which is allegedly being harnessed and utilized to power these anti-gravity flying machines, and it is the main mode of propulsion. So there you go, this is another real Wikipedia page. This is not fake. I'm not making this up, ladies and gentlemen. This is a real source. Everyone, please look this up for yourself. Don't take my word for it. But I'm showing you very trusted, reliable sources here. This is wikipedia.org. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide that we have, which is yet again wikipedia.org. Very trusted, very reliable. And the title of this Wikipedia page is Ion-Propelled Aircraft, another real Wikipedia page out there on the internet that everyone can look up for yourself. Everyone can do a quick search and read this information for yourself. Ion-propelled aircraft. An ion-propelled aircraft, or ionocraft, is an aircraft that uses electrohydrodynamics, EHD, to provide lift or thrust in the air without requiring combustion or moving parts. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is ion-propelled aircraft, which is basically just another name for an anti-gravity flying machine. And so this is real science. These are real Wikipedia pages. These are widely discussed topics, widely accepted fields of science. And so there you go. That is very interesting, very thought-provoking, very intriguing. Let's go ahead and move on now to the next bit of information and the next slide that we have here to discuss and to analyze here on the Austin Perry Show, episode 44. This is a video that I want to show everyone. This is about a 4 to 5 minute video. And this is discussing the Russian scientist Viktor Grebennikov, who developed a levitating box. And there is video of this, and if you look into this yourself, this isn't just a conspiracy theory. This is actual science, ladies and gentlemen. And so this video, I think, is going to blow your mind, honestly. Basically, he discovered that scarab beetle wings actually have magnetic properties, and under certain circumstances can levitate. And he discovered a way to manipulate this and harness that magnet energy, essentially, and he created a floating box out of scarab beetle wings. I can't make this up, folks. I mean, let's just go ahead and watch the video. Don't take my word for it. Let's go ahead and watch here.
It's a man named Grebennikov from Russia. Grebennikov was kind of a non-conventional scientist. He was an entomologist, did a lot of work with bugs, entomology. And his favorite thing was to go out into the steppes of Russia and into the various outer hinterlands and camp out in the summers and study his favorite subject. And on one of these expeditions, he started seeing some weird effects. This is all explained in great detail on the AchilleNet site if you type in Grebennikov and his flying box or gravity platform. But anyhow, the result of this was to show that he found a certain bug that didn't fly, it levitated. And this was, he'd put this bug into a little vial or something, and he saw this vial jumping up off the lab table, jumping up and down. And of course this is patently impossible based on any type of normal physics. So he got into this, and he found out that the bug wings themselves were creating an anti-gravity phenomena under certain conditions. And of course what we have here, if you analyze, I think I found the bug, actually a beetle. And if you analyze this bug structure, you see a hexagonal pyramid structure array throughout the entire bottom wing of this bug. Turns out that beetles have two wings. The top wing is called a wing cover, and what the beetle does is it lifts this wing cover up, and then it flips out its lower wings, or inner wings. Now the bug cover protects the inner wings, but when it gets excited or something, it flips these other wings out, and it flaps these other wings, and the inner wings flap a little, and this beetle goes gyrating around. They can't fly very good, but they sure levitate great, I guess. And anyway, he took a whole bunch of these bug wings, and he glued them to like a Venetia blind structure, and he put it into a little platform he built. So they were all, these bug wings were all covered in here. And he used I theorize he used the wing covers as well as the inner wing itself. There's also a kind of a handlebar on this thing with some controls. You can see the thing a little better here in detail. The controls, I think, had to be manipulated continuously and probably vibrated to create the same action that the bug was doing. There was also down at the base some kind of a lever, which I suspect controlled the amount of lift he was getting out of this thing. Anyway, Grebennikov claimed that he could fly this thing, or levitate it, and it would go around at almost 1,000 miles an hour. Now you ask, how can that happen? Well, he said that there was an energy field that built up around this thing due to this gravity field building up in the platform, and by this thing building up, it built out a force field that basically surrounded him and protected him from the local environment. So even though he was flying at 1,000 miles an hour, you could go you know, you could be wearing your Sunday best suit and not get it flutter a bit at 1,000 miles an hour. I'm not sure I'd want to stand on something going 1,000 miles an hour that's 2 feet square. But this picture here shows him sitting on the ground, and these pictures are much better if you get on the KeelyNet side. This is the platform with him on it about 3 to 6 feet above the ground, because here's the shadow here down below. Now you could say this is all faked, but if you get into the other things he did with shape, they almost mirror the stuff that I discovered, and it proves, I guess, that, you know, there's either two crazy people in the world, or there's two people that have found the same discoveries. So I think that this is a valid phenomenon, and I'll show you why. Next slide is a micrograph that I took of a beetle inner wing. This is at 100x. If you look closely at this thing, you can see rows of bumps all along the bottom of this wing, each row is staggered from the next row next to it, and this is all over the surface of the bottom of the wing. Now, I don't know of any aerodynamic surface that has bumps all over the bottom to help it fly better. If you blow this up to 430x, you can start to see some of this microstructure of the cells that form where these bumps are. The next slide, at 970x, you start to see what these bumps that stick up are. They're hairs, look like hairs or fibers that grow out of the center of these hexagonal cells. And of course, this harkens back to my basic shape power discovery, is that each one of these, because of their shape going down to a point, is creating a magnetic field. And remember, a magnetic field is a rotating piece of vortex in the ether.
Wow. So, ladies and gentlemen, there you go. That is amazing. Because of the physical properties of these beetle wings, they have magnetism, which causes them to levitate. And this scientist discovered this phenomenon and was able to harness it and manipulate it and actually utilize it to power a very rudimentary flying craft, which was essentially just a platform that you stand on, which created a magnetic energy field around you. And by manipulating that magnetic field, you could control your direction. And he could allegedly go up to 1,000 miles an hour standing on this little box with like a pogo stick handle. Wow, that is mind-blowing. So everyone, go ahead and look this up for yourself. Do your own research. Don't take my word for it. That is the Russian scientist Viktor Grebennikov, who has discovered levitation and magnetism with scarab beetle wings, which had very fine, very tiny, pointed hairs, microscopic points on the inside. And because of the properties of magnetism, that was enhancing the magnetic energy. And so that is what magnetized the wings, was these millions and millions of little tiny points, which was the microstructure on the inside of the scarab beetle wing. Very fascinating. And so there you go, ladies and gentlemen. There is another type of anti-gravity flying machine, which was a levitating box created by Viktor Grebennikov. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide now. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a man by the name of Mark McCandlish. And here you can see him standing next to a board where he has taped up an image, which is an illustration that he drew himself. I'm going to give you a little bit of backstory about this guy, and then I'm going to show you a video about him and his findings. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Mark McCandlish. He is very well known within ufology, and he is the man responsible for creating this drawing right here, which is a diagram, a blueprint drawing of the flux liner, which is a very simplistic proof of concept prototype alien replication vehicle. And basically, Mark McCandlish started out his career back in the early 80s as an aviation illustrator. So the same as like how an architect will draft blueprint drawings of like a building structure that they're planning on building, back before computers, back before the 90s, back in the 80s and before, all of the different complex machines such as jets and aircraft were hand-drawn before they attempted to make them actually by hand. And so they would hand-draw actual illustrations of fighter jets, of helicopters. And so this was an actual career, and this was this man's profession back in the early 80s. He actually hand drew several blueprints for several different types of aviation designs for airplanes, jets, helicopters, etc. And so around the time frame of 1989 was when he was first encountered by someone who said that they had been exposed to this alien replication vehicle that you see the drawing of here behind me on the video monitor. And so basically someone described what they saw to Mark McCandlish, who was already an experienced aviation illustrator, and he became very fascinated, very intrigued, and so he started talking to other people and within the community of ufology who had also been exposed to this design because they were either in the military or things like that. And so basically just by people describing what they had seen when they had seen this actual machine in real life, but them describing it to Mark McCandlish, he took in all those details and he drew up this design of the flux liner, which is allegedly a real top secret classified military alien replication vehicle. And so he drew this design. This is the flux liner. This is very famous within ufology and people that study UFOs and UFO lore. And so here he is with his very famous drawing of the flux liner, which he drew. And so basically a little backstory on how the flux liner operates. So essentially you have a disc here in the very bottom of the craft. This is the capacitor at the bottom. And then you have a flywheel, which is another disc about halfway through. And these are counter-rotating discs. One is rotating clockwise while the other is rotating counterclockwise. And then connecting these two discs, you have a central column. You can see the central column right there. And what that is a column which is filled with gas, a gas solution filled with mercury gas, thorium gas, and a couple other types of gas. And there is a gas vortex within that central column which is electrified and with high voltage. And between those components of the two counter-rotating discs and the vortex of electrified gas in the center column, it somehow creates a magnetic field which surrounds the entire craft, which can be manipulated by the pilot to propel the craft through the sky and through space. It is extremely fascinating, and when I first started researching this, it blew my mind, ladies and gentlemen. And so there you have the backstory on Mark McCandlish. And so now that you have a little bit of history and insight into what you're looking at in this image here, let's go ahead and watch a video on this exact thing which I was talking about. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide here and play this video. Mark McCandlish and the ARV flux liner, alien replication vehicle, which is a type of anti-gravity flying machine. So let's go full screen here, and let's go ahead and play this.
The ARV system, for all of its claims of flashy, out-of-this-world propulsion capabilities, was indeed remarkably simple. It could be described as a large-scale, souped-up Tesla coil, designed to negate gravity and inertia, with off-the-shelf navigation and life support systems bolted on, almost as an afterthought. You could think of it as the Model T of anti-gravity vehicles, an industrial dune buggy, or crude hot rod that can get you to Mars in a few minutes. In this version at least, first-class seating was still a way off.
From everything I've been able to gather, it helps to understand what some of the components are. There's a large capacitor array on the bottom of the craft. It's on the smallest version, it's 24 feet in diameter. The outer edge of the plates and the capacitor section itself, they're shaved off at that same 35-degree angle. So you have a series of plates that are progressively smaller as you get higher and higher in the stack. And there's 48 sections that are all set up like that. Through the middle of the crew compartment is a central column that's called the amplifier section that's in the middle of the craft. On the very center point of that column is what looks like a large 9-foot diameter flywheel type mechanism. Then around the belt line of the crew compartment is about a 2-foot wide coil of wire that's embedded in the same glass-like material that the capacitor section plates are embedded in.
And there's a kind of flange or fairing that traps the top and the bottom surfaces of the coil. You can see that it traps it there at the top. But in between are a series of explosive bolts that run all the way around the craft. They said above this ledge there is looks like a door out of, your stereotypical cartoon submarine. It has a steel frame that's embedded in the side of this protruded sphere that makes up the crew compartment. And he said that it had a wheel on it with little spokes that you would turn like an old, Captain Nemo submarine, with the pins that would go out and lock into the door frame. It had a seal on it so it would be airtight.
And then the ejection seats are mounted back to back. There's 4 of them in the smallest version of the craft, and they're mounted on this central column on a set of rails.
In the event of an ejection, the explosive bolts separate the top and the bottom halves of the crew compartment, and the entire outer sheath of the central column pulls away along with the upper half of the crew compartment and the ejection seats. This crew compartment sphere can actually function as kind of a rudimentary re-entry vehicle coming down through the atmosphere, and then once you get, say, below 14, 15, 16,000 feet, the thing will pop a chute out the top, and the ejection seats drop off on these rails one by one, and the pilot can drift down in a parachute or with a parachute. Because this flywheel-like mechanism is turning all the time, the individual pilot or crew members have a kind of a pan that's right below the front of the ejection seat that affords them a place to put their feet.
Now, the control system on the vehicle, on the ejection seat that the pilot sits in, on the one hand, it looks like a high voltage potentiometer or like a rheostat on the one side that has a couple of big heavy duty cables that come out of it and goes into the central column. And that's basically the amount of power that he has in the system. And on the other side, there was sort of an inverted J-shaped piece of metal that came up and over like that had a sphere on it. Now, on the bottom of the sphere, there is a sort of a bowl that's sort of slightly larger in diameter, but it conforms to the shape of this sphere.
Of all the components of the ARV, the navigation system, while perfectly logical and even elegant in its design, has to be the strangest one. It's an entirely unknown paradigm in steering an aircraft or anything else, yet makes perfect technical sense. If one were to make the case for truly alien aspects of the alien reproduction vehicle, this might be the first example they'd use.
The sphere itself appears to be a kind of a domed arrangement where you have a number of fiber optic leads that come into the sphere, and for each one of the 48 capacitor arrays, there's a series of sensors that are then used to sort of relay information to the individual plates. So then, on the bottom of this, you have a bowl that moves around and can be used to convey the commands of the pilot in terms of what he wants to do in terms of shaping the field around the vehicle. And right in the center of that bowl is a kind of laser diode that sends a laser beam up into the underside, the inside of this sphere. And so as the bowl moves, that laser is sort of scanning around on the inside of the different sensors that are responsible for each of the capacitor sections. Then there's a series of relays that will open up and close and let a certain amount of energy in, or prevent it from going in. And when it's dead center, it means that all of them get the exact same amount of information. You just go straight up. If you want to bank to the right, then you bank this to the right. It sends the laser signal over to the opposite side of the dome, and it says that the opposite side of the craft is going to get more energy, so it banks in that direction. It's kind of like in a helicopter, in the swash plate of a helicopter. When you want to bank to the left, you create more deflection in the main rotor on the right side, so that it begins to bank to the right, or bank to the left, excuse me. So it's kind of the same principle.
Then you have an oxygen supply that's strapped to the lower part of the central column down here in the lower part of the crew compartment.
So, ladies and gentlemen, there you go. That is a small section of this very long video, which is an hour and 8-minute long video, which I encourage everyone to look up and to research for yourself. It goes into much more detail about how there have been several patents worldwide concerning various aspects of anti-gravity technology. And it talks about the propulsion system, which, like I described before, is the counter-rotating discs with the central column filled with a mercury gas solution, which is electrified, which is somehow producing this magnetic field which you can manipulate. And that just described the various components. And that is Mark McCandlish, like I said, who was a aviation illustrator, which was his career, and then he drew this design of the flux liner, which was described to him by various different sources, and it totally changed his life, and he became obsessed with researching these ARV, alien replication vehicles. And so there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Very fascinating, very thought-provoking. And like I said, this alien replication vehicle flux liner prototype design is a very rudimentary, simple design. They have much more complex designs and much more refined designs and much larger ones. This is a very small one. Like he was saying, it basically just has 4 seats, no luxury at all, very, very simple. They have much, much more advanced ones than this, but this gives you an idea into what type of machine these machines are and how they work and how they operate. And they would use, as you can see here, and here you see those little bubble domes. That was the synthetic vision system, which was how they would see where they are going, which are basically cameras on the outside of the craft, and they would be displayed on a monitor in front of you, or they would have a headset on with a display in front of their eyes like that. And so there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's the flux liner, which was drawn by famous UFO researcher Mark McCandlish. I encourage everyone to look this up and research it for yourself. And that small section of the video that I showed you, of that long hour and 8-minute long video, if you want to look it up for yourself on YouTube, it's called ARV and the Mark McCandlish Story, the Free Energy Flux Liner UFO Spacecraft. There you go. I just highlighted it right there. And once again, that's called ARV and the Mark McCandlish Story, the Free Energy Flux Liner UFO Spacecraft. That's the title of the video on YouTube, and that's from the YouTube channel UFOtube.com. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Very fascinating, very thought-provoking, very intriguing. that is my deep dive into the topic of anti-gravity flying machines. And so these are potentially spacecrafts and aircrafts that are being kept secret from the public. They're classified, and these are things that are becoming more known about and more widely talked about. And this information is slowly but surely being disseminated into the public for public consumption. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's my show here on this episode 44 edition of the Austin Perry Show on this June 17th, 2021. And here on the Austin Perry Show is where we like to talk about advanced technology, aliens, current events, politics, culture, news, and here is where we strive for expanded consciousness and enlightenment. And ladies and gentlemen, if you like what I'm doing, if you would like to support me, please visit my website, which is AustinParry.org, and that's spelled P-A-R-R-Y, AustinParry.org. And that's where you can find all of my video content and where you can find merchandise for sale and artwork for sale. And if you would like to support a grassroots patriot journalist, please leave me a donation. You can find the donation link on my website. And that will really help me out into the future to support my video content, and I will be very grateful for that, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you for watching, everyone, so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Everyone, have a great night, and I will see you on the next episode, which will be episode 45 of the Austin Perry Show. Everyone have a great night. Love and peace, and goodbye.